everybody, welcome back to our next video. This video is going to focus on our home screen. That is the main screen that you're looking at behind me. It's a very simple screen to look at. You can add additional icons to this screen, but when you first get your IFP, this is what it's going to look like. You're going to need to remember that this IFP is Android based, so it's a lot like if you have a Samsung phone that's an Android operating system. You're going to see a lot of similarities between this board and how you operate your phone in terms of adding icons and installing things and things like that. But this is your home screen. Obviously you can see in the top you have your time and you have your date. If the time and date are not correct, it's probably because you're not hooked up to the Wi-Fi, that the IFP was not hooked up to the Wi-Fi. You might remember in a previous video we talked about the dongle that you needed to connect up to the Wi-Fi. If your date and time is not correct, it means you're not hooked up to the Wi-Fi. There is a way of setting the date and time without being hooked up to the internet, and we'll talk about that in a later video when we talk about the flyout screen and some of the settings. So this is the main home screen. You can see at the bottom we have 6 icons. You have your web browser. If I click on the web browser, if I'm connected to the Wi-Fi, it'll bring up a web page, just like if I was bringing it up on my computer. Most of you out there will be using your computer that's hooked up to the IFP. But again, this device is designed so that you really don't need to have a computer hooked up to it. I can log into my Google account here and save everything to my Google Drive. I can resurrect files from my Google Drive. I can go on websites. I can run programs. I can do everything right from this. That being said, many of you are very comfortable with the laptops, especially those of you who still use ActiveInspire with your flip charts. So many of you will probably still be using your computer hooked up to the IFP. That being said, I can access the internet directly from that main screen, that home screen with the web browser icon, and I can click on things just like I can anywhere else if I was using a computer and navigate around. If I click up here where the address bar is, you can see it brings up a keyboard down here where I can just go ahead and type in any website that I want and navigate directly to it. Again, I have no computer hooked up to this. This is all based off of what's installed on the IFP. And right there it goes to the Google website. So the first icon that I wanted to show you was that web browser icon. The next icon is a game changer, in my opinion, and we're going to spend a whole video just on, if not more, on this icon. This is the whiteboard icon. This brings you to a blank slate, a blank whiteboard where I can click the plus sign. I can import PDF files to write on. I can make a note, or I can just do a default note if I have something set up as a default. When I click new, it brings up all of these great templates that are very classroom friendly. I've got math templates, I've got graphing templates, I even have music templates. And once I select one of those, it'll take me into a whiteboard where I'll be able to just draw on it just like I would a regular whiteboard. Oh, look at that, I got a little happy face in my half note there. And if I do go back and I just want to create a blank note, I can hit new note, and I can just choose the blank template, and then I can write anything I want on this board, changing colors, doing whatever I want. So you have the functionality of just a blank whiteboard if you want as well. So that is the whiteboard, which again we'll get to much in depth in a later video. If I click on all apps, you can see, similar to your phone, it brings up all the apps that you have installed on the IFP. You can add more apps. In fact, I've seen a demo where Angry Birds was installed on the board and people were playing games right here on the board. But right now this is the basic set of apps that you'll have installed on your IFP when you first receive it. Notice I'm always clicking on this little arrow and clicking the home button. That brings me back to the home screen. The flyout menu, which we'll talk about in a different video, I can access it from this side or I can access it from this side. It's the same menu on both sides. Moving along the bottom, I had the browser, I had the whiteboard, I had the apps, the file manager. This is where all of my files are saved. If I take screenshots, if I import pictures, if I import any PDFs to write on, they're all saved in these folders, just like you have in Google Drive or on Windows Explorer. You have your folders. So if I took pictures or if I downloaded any PDFs, I could click on download. Those files would appear right there. Over here on App Switch, you're either like me or you're like my wife. Sometimes on their phones they like to have all these apps running in the background and they never close them. So I've had a lot of apps that have been opened since I've been doing these demos, and you can see they all appear here. If I hit App Switch, I can easily go and jump to the settings, to the browser, to the whiteboard, or the file manager. Me personally, I don't like to have all of those things open in the background. I know some of you, like I said, my wife will have all of them open, makes it very easy to quick switch back and forth between apps. I like to get things cleaned up a little bit. So when I click on that app switch, I can either hit the X to close out that program, or I can just take it and slide it off the screen. And you can see that closes all of the apps. The same thing if I just wanted to hit the X button, I can do that too. So the app switch allows you to switch back and forth between apps very easily. And finally, the source button, we kind of talked about this in a prior video. This allows me to jump back and forth between different inputs on my television. Personally, I don't like that button as much as I like on the flyout menu. There's an option here for sources. It's the top one right here. And it gives me all of the different inputs that I can do, and we'll talk about that in another video as well. But that source button and that on the flyout can do the same thing in terms of switching between different devices. So that is your home screen and the 6 different apps that are located on the bottom of your IFP.